James Harden might just be that guy to take the Clippers over the edge and maybe, just maybe, finally win the Larry O'Brien Trophy this year. Hi guys, welcome to the Clear Path Podcast. Today we're doing an emergency episode, just me here, Adish, talking to you about the all-important James Harden trade and why this might be the trade to take the Clippers over the top and why the 76ers may also benefit in this trade as well. So starting off with the James Harden side of things, I think it's important to talk about what a cancer he was to the 76ers locker room kind of before the season and why this trade is being done. Typically, we don't see superstar players traded this early in the season, but clearly James Harden's situation is different. Just to outline a little bit of the story, so obviously he called Daryl Morey a liar during the offseason when he went on his summer visit to China. It's reported that he says he's a liar just because of bad communication. Some people actually speculate that Daryl Morey maybe had a wink-wink deal with James Harden because in the past, James Harden decided to take a discount to add players like PJ Tucker and Daniel House Jr. last year to the 76ers. And so by taking less money, he allowed Daryl Morey to build a better team. And the wink-wink deal that people are proposing might be that the 76ers said, after you're done with this deal, James Harden, we're going to max you out. But that's not what happened. Instead, Daryl Morey, after the playoffs versus the Celtics, according to James Harden at least, remained quiet and mum on an extension, a max extension. And so James Harden felt like he'd been lied to. And so he accepted his player option and reportedly demanded a trade. And Daryl Morey was obviously not going to keep him on the roster for very long just because we've seen what James Harden can do on the roster when he doesn't want to be there. We can just look at Houston when, I guess, fittingly on Halloween, he was wearing like a fat suit essentially and looked like he gained a bunch of weight and wasn't in shape and wasn't playing very well for them at all before he was traded to the Brooklyn Nets. So today we have him moving from the 76ers to the Brooklyn Nets. And now not to the Brooklyn Nets, sorry, the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, the Los Angeles Clippers can definitely benefit from his scoring punch that he can provide, but I think the biggest benefit that they're going to receive is his ability to pass. I think that's super important with this team, where nobody on this team actually averages over 6 assists per game. Russell Westbrook used to be a good assister of the basketball, but oftentimes he's looking for his own shot as well. And James Harden has actually proved to be an elite assister of the basketball and a great passer of the basketball and playmaker with the basketball, as we saw on specifically the Nets when he averaged almost 10 to 11 assists per game and was very efficient on the court, passing the basketball around to the likes of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and allowing them to facilitate an offense. And I think that's why James Harden is going to be a great fit in the LA Clippers organization. And also, I think the fact that this might be his last stop, just because everyone is maligning him for all of these trade requests and trade demands, it seems like with the way things are, this might be James Harden's last big deal and last chance to really prove that he deserves a big deal with the Clippers, because if he's disgruntled there, a lot of other teams are going to think, okay, he's been disgruntled in 3 or 4 different places. Why do we think our place is going to be different? I feel like it's kind of similar to Kyrie Irving, where if it doesn't work out with the Dallas Mavericks for Kyrie Irving, I feel like a lot of other teams are going to be like, hey, is he really worth that max amount for a long-term deal when, you know, there's a lot of things that are going on around him that aren't just about basketball. And for James Harden, those a lot of things around basketball are somewhat involved in basketball, but a lot of times like the contract and not trying his hardest all the time and going to the clubs and partying and things of that nature. And I think overall the fit is pretty clear cut. A lot of people don't think that Russell Westbrook and James Harden can fit together, but I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think that one of them can kind of command the second unit a little bit more. I think Russell Westbrook you could expect to see with the second unit a little bit more. But in the minutes they do play together, I think Russell Westbrook in the playoffs last year showed that he can be defensively tenacious. And I think this also gives them lineup flexibility, specifically in the playoffs when we know, honestly, with this team, hate to say it, but PG or Kawhi are probably not going to be healthy throughout the entire playoffs. And so James Harden can carry more of a scoring load when they're out. And that allows them to kind of be a dynamic team and a team that can do a little bit better than people expect this year, I think, and potentially really challenge for a championship. I think this is definitely a team that you have to worry about for the championship if they all stay healthy, but them all staying healthy is like a 1 in a million chance. So it's really tough to really predict that they all stay healthy for the duration of the season, or even just the duration of the playoffs, which in itself, honestly, is a whole nother season. But it is important to say kind of they gave up a first round pick. They gave up a pick swap. They gave up a second round pick. They gave up players like Robert Covington, Marcus Morris. This, for me, signals that the Clippers are kind of going all in for this year. Obviously, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George can all be free agents after this season. Russell Westbrook can also be a free agent after this season. And so it's kind of clear that right now the Clippers really don't have a choice but to go all in with this team and try and win the championship this year. They're moving into a new arena next year, so I'd expect some of their stars to stay just so that they can sell new arena tickets, and the fact that they have no first round pick, so nobody is really going to be coming that's of a name value, so to say, if they don't re-sign some of their picks. So I think overall this leads to an interesting situation with the Clippers where they're finally pushing all their chips to the middle of the table. Now to talk about the chips that the 76ers actually withdrew from this Clippers trade, I think they actually made out pretty well in this trade. I think getting a first-round pick, 2 first-round picks, actually one kind of routed from, I believe, the Thunder, and then a second-round pick and a pick swap is definitely better than what they probably were going to get later on in the season, honestly, just because I feel like the more disgruntled Harden got, the more likely his price was to go down, and really it seemed like a situation where only the Clippers were bidding, and I'm honestly surprised he didn't just go for a first round pick and like matching salaries like Marcus Morris and Covington, just because of how low his value seemed to be, just because the market only really had one team in it, it seemed like, and it seemed like James Harden was forcing his way to one team, but clearly they got a package, I think, that they could potentially flip for another disgruntled, not star or all-star, but someone in that like kind of middle tier. I feel like somebody like slightly lower than kind of a Drew Holiday. If I were to give like an example of this player, I feel like we're looking at somebody like OG Anunoby maybe. They could move 2 of those first round picks and a second round pick and maybe a player that they got in that deal like Marcus Morris maybe for OG Anunoby. So I think that's kind of what they're looking at here, parlaying these picks and these players into potentially a better player that fits better with their roster. And I think somebody like Anunoby would be perfect. So I think Daryl Morey really did the best out of this kind of bad situation. Obviously, Harden is better than any of those options, I think, personally, on the basketball court. And I think people are really sleeping on Harden in terms of how good of a basketball player he is. He isn't just some role player, and people don't judge him as some role player. So when you get a role player for him, you're really kind of lowering your team's ceiling. But the good thing about the 76ers is that because Harden's gone, Tyrese Maxey can kind of step into this role, and he's been Eastern Conference Player of the Week, scoring over 30 in the last couple games, and he's been able to push the pace without Harden in the game, and I think that's really helping them. I think there is an offensive ceiling for Tyrese Maxey, shooting like 57% from 3, I think, and that's going to go down throughout the season, and I think teams will start to figure him out as the season goes on, as they do with every young player, but I think overall his ascension is really going to be key to the 76ers title hopes, and parlaying those picks into somebody who's a defensive-minded, likely wing player who can help out Embiid on defense and also facilitate good three-point shooting so that there's good spacing around Joel Embiid so he can work kind of in the paint, and he loves like the kind of those elbow areas overall. But overall, I think both teams made out well. I think the Clippers might have given up a little bit too much just because they gave up a lot for a player that, you know, everyone knew was going to the Clippers. And I feel like the 76ers did well because they were able to get picks that they can potentially parlay into a role player, somebody like OG Anunoby, as I talked about. And I think that's why this grade for the 76ers is still incomplete for me. The grade for the Clippers, I would probably give them a B on this trade just because I feel like they did give up a little bit too much. But if the 76ers can't parlay this into anything like OG Anunoby level or like kind of a good wing defender player, then I really think this trade is kind of a D or a C just because of the fact that keeping Embiid is the primary priority, I feel like, for the 76ers. And if they aren't able to get players now, A 2028 first-round pick is honestly worthless. A 2030 pick is honestly worthless. They need players now to make Embiid stay and sign another long-term contract with them. But overall, I'm happy to see some news in the NBA. I'm happy James Harden got moved, and so we can potentially see him play hopefully soon and see how the LA Clippers are going to work. In the next podcast, I'm sure me and Jeff will go over how they work together, how Russell Westbrook and James Harden work together, and how the Clippers are vibing as well as the 76ers. But catch you guys in the next weekly podcast. We record twice a week, usually Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Saturday, Sunday. So you can expect us to kind of publish videos then. If you've made it to the end of this video, please like, subscribe, comment. Just smash every button on your computer, I guess. And thank you for watching all the way through.